Have you ever stumbled across something so unexpected, so life-shaking, that it forced you to question every memory you once held dear? Not just a passing surprise, but a discovery that reaches into your soul and whispers, everything you believed might have been a lie. At 73 years old, I thought I had faced it all: love, heartbreak, the slow ache of losing the person I had shared nearly half a century with. I thought grief had already given me its worst blow. But life has a cruel way of waiting until you've grown tired, until your bones ache and your spirit begs for peace, to hand you the kind of truth that makes you tremble. This is not a story about a simple box in an attic. It is a story about betrayal wearing the face of family, secrets carried by the man I buried, and a fight I never imagined I would have to face in my final years. My name is Dorothy Whitman, though most people just call me Dot. At 73, I often tell myself I've earned the right to some peace. Yet peace is exactly what seems to have slipped away from me. 3 years have passed since I laid my husband, Robert, to rest. In that time, my house has grown quieter, almost too quiet, so quiet that the ticking of the clock feels like a hammer in an empty cathedral. I shuffle through my days with aching joints that protest each step. Arthritis has made even simple chores a battlefield. Carrying laundry up the stairs? Painful. Reaching into the garden Robert once adored? Nearly impossible. Finances only add weight to my shoulders. Robert's medical bills drained what little savings we had, and my monthly check stretches thinner than it ever used to. Some nights, I heat a can of soup and call it dinner, not because I can't cook, but because the energy has drained out of me. And still, every morning, I find myself making 2 cups of coffee out of habit. One for me, and one for Robert. His chair at the kitchen table sits across from mine, untouched but never abandoned. That chair reminds me that love once filled this home, love that cancer could not take, even if it took the man himself. But loneliness is a cruel companion. It doesn't just sit beside you, it gnaws at your spirit, whispering doubts. It makes you wonder if the best years of your life are already behind you. You would think that in my twilight years, my own child would bring me comfort. But comfort isn't what my daughter Linda offers me these days. Instead, she offers plans. Plans to move me out of the only home Robert and I ever owned. Plans to downsize. Plans for a future I never asked for. Mom, she tells me at dinner with that practiced tone of concern, you can't keep living alone in this big house. It's dangerous for you. The stairs, the bills, the maintenance. You can't manage it anymore. Her husband, Kevin, always sits there nodding, his accountant's mind ticking like a cash register. He chimes in about financial burdens, retirement options, and senior living communities. I hear the words, but I also hear the silence between them, the kind of silence that tells me their worry isn't about my well-being. It's about my house, my money, my life's work. The same house Robert and I spent 46 years filling with memories. The same walls that still echo with our laughter, our arguments, our love. To Linda and Kevin, it's just property value. To me, it's a sanctuary. Yet every conversation turns into pressure. Pressure to sign papers. Pressure to meet realtors. Pressure to let go of the very place that keeps Robert's memory alive. I sit there, spooning soup into my bowl, pretending to listen, but inside I'm screaming, why can't you just let me be? Why can't you see that this house is not just walls and bricks? It's my heart. And in those moments, I feel smaller. Not like a mother respected by her grown daughter, but like a burden being quietly pushed toward the edge. What Linda and Kevin didn't know was that their pressure, their schemes, and their constant whispers of, you can't manage anymore, were slowly awakening something inside me. For a long time, I believed them. I believed I was weak, too old to fight, too fragile to stand my ground. But life has a way of surprising even those who think they've lost all their fight. I didn't know it then, but soon I would discover something hidden in the quiet corners of this very house, something that would change everything. Letters from Robert. Letters written after the day I buried him. Those letters would show me truths I never wanted to believe. They would drag me into a storm of betrayal, lies, and greed. But they would also give me the one thing I thought I had lost forever: purpose. This isn't just the story of a lonely widow being taken advantage of. No. This is the story of a woman who was forced to rise again when everyone expected her to collapse. The story of betrayal answered with justice, of weakness turned into survival. So stay with me, because if you think old age means defeat, my story will prove otherwise. Before I share more of this journey with you, allow me a moment to speak to you, dear listener. If your bones ache when you rise in the morning, may strength return to you like sunlight breaking through a storm. If your heart has been bruised by betrayal, may comfort wrap around you like a warm shawl on a cold evening. And if you sit in silence, feeling forgotten, may peace fill your home and may laughter return to your table. If you're in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, may your days still carry meaning, and may no one ever convince you that your story is finished. You are valued, you are needed, and you are loved. Now, I invite you to join me on this journey. If you find strength or comfort in stories like this, please tap that subscribe button, leave a like to support us, and share in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know which corner of the world you are listening from so we can pray for you too. Because this isn't just my story, it is ours. And together, we will walk through it, one truth at a time. The morning I finally gathered the strength to face the attic, the sky outside carried a dull shade of gray, the kind that seeps into your bones. Rain tapped gently against the windows, steady as a drumbeat, while a chill clung to the air. It was the kind of day that makes most people want to stay in bed. But I had run out of excuses. 4 months, Linda and Kevin had pressed me about it. "Mom, the clutter up there is dangerous. You can't keep ignoring it," Linda said, her voice always sharp with concern that sounded less like love and more like command. Kevin, with his accountant's reasoning, often added, "Think of the house's value. An attic full of junk makes the place look neglected." So I decided to do what I hadn't done since Robert passed away, climb those stairs. Each step groaned beneath my weight, echoing the complaints of my knees. Halfway up, I had to grip the railing, steadying myself as dizziness washed over me. My doctor had warned me about my blood pressure and sudden movements, but I whispered to myself, "I can do this. I'm not useless." Not yet. When I reached the top, the familiar stale smell met me. Dust, cardboard, wood, and time itself lingered in the air. It wasn't just an attic. It was a memory vault. Boxes stacked high, each marked with Robert's careful handwriting, lined the space. He had always been precise, dating every carton: Christmas lights 1998 to 2010, Linda's school projects, taxes 1980 to 1999. Seeing his handwriting was like hearing his voice again. I slid one box across the wooden floor and coughed as a cloud of dust rose around me. My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled out items one by one. Linda's school drawings, Robert's army uniform, photo albums whose pages had begun to curl with age. Each piece carried a memory sharp enough to pierce the heart. I paused with a framed picture of Robert holding baby Linda, his smile wide, his hair still thick and dark. My throat tightened. I missed that smile more than words could explain. For a moment, the weight of loneliness pressed so heavily on me that I nearly gave up the task. But I reminded myself, Robert would want me to finish this. Hours passed as I sorted through years of our life. The attic was warm despite the rain outside, and sweat trickled down my temples. My back ached, but stubbornness kept me going. I was determined to prove, to Linda, to Kevin, but mostly to myself, that I wasn't the frail woman they painted me to be. It was then that I noticed a box tucked behind the Christmas decorations. Unlike the others, it wasn't labeled in Robert's handwriting. Instead, it had been scrawled with only 2 letters, RW, personal. The penmanship was unfamiliar, almost hurried. My pulse quickened. Dragging it into the light, I noticed the cardboard was newer, not yellowed like the older boxes. I lifted the lid, and inside, a neat stack of envelopes lay tied together with a ribbon. My heart stopped. The ribbon was unmistakable, blue satin from a Christmas gift I had given Robert years ago. Hands trembling, I picked up the first envelope. The return address nearly made me drop it. Written in Robert's own handwriting, Robert J. Whitman, our home address. My breath caught. The postmark read, December 15th, 2021. My vision blurred, and I wiped at my eyes, certain I was mistaken. But no, the date was clear. Robert had died on October 3rd, 2021. This letter had been mailed 2 months after his death. I fumbled for my glasses, desperate to be sure. Robert's handwriting hadn't changed in 40 years. That familiar slant, the way his are curved at the top, the slight pressure of his pen strokes. It was him. Slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside was the cream-colored stationery I had gifted him for our anniversary, embossed with his initials. My dearest, the letter began. My knees weakened as though the ground itself had shifted. It was Robert's voice. His tone. His way of writing. The words carried a warning. He told me he wasn't gone, not in the way I thought, and that I was in danger. He urged me not to trust Linda and Kevin. He spoke of greed, of pressure to sell the house, of lies hidden beneath their words. He pleaded that I check the next letters but keep them hidden. The paper slipped in my shaking hands. My mind screamed this was impossible. How could a man write after his death? Was I losing my mind to grief? But then came the second letter. This one was shorter, dated December 20th, 2021. Robert wrote about his life insurance policy. The $500,000 Linda had insisted was stuck in processing. According to him, it wasn't delayed at all. The money had already been paid out a month after his death, and Linda had quietly redirected it. He even gave me the exact policy number, urging me to verify it myself. I sat frozen, the letter resting on my lap as my heart thundered. If Robert was right, then my daughter, the child I raised, the girl I once sang lullabies to, had been stealing from me. Memories of unpaid bills, nights where I stretched my meager checks just to keep the lights on, flooded back, all while Linda lived comfortably, driving her silver SUV, wearing fresh manicures and expensive boots. The attic walls seemed to close in on me. My hands grew cold as the truth dug into my chest like sharp glass. I reached for the third letter, desperate and terrified at once. But before I could open it, the sound of tires crunching on gravel reached my ears. Through the attic's tiny window, I caught sight of Linda's silver Lexus pulling into the driveway. Kevin stepped out beside her, his face set in that determined expression I had grown to dread. My breath caught in my throat. The letters still lay scattered across the floor. If they knew I had found them, what would happen? Quickly, I gathered the stack, tied them with the ribbon, and shoved the box back behind the decorations, burying it beneath the weight of holiday cheer. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped them, but I forced myself to be quick. Mom. Linda's voice rang out from the porch, too sweet, too rehearsed. We saw your car. We know you're home. The doorbell chimed once, twice. Kevin jiggled the handle, testing the lock. My heart pounded as I pressed my palm against the attic floor, whispering, Robert, if you truly are with me, give me strength. Then, steadying my breath, I began the painful descent down the attic stairs, each creak louder than the last, as if warning me. The game had only just begun. That night, sleep refused to come. Every creak of the old house made me think Robert was still moving around upstairs, and every brush of wind against the window carried the faint whisper of his voice. I turned from one side to the other, my body aching not from age alone but from a storm of thoughts. When the first hints of dawn stretched across the sky, I gave up on rest. I pulled on my robe and walked to the kitchen. The clock read 4:30 a.m., yet my hands shook as though I'd been awake for days. I poured myself coffee, the familiar sound of it dripping into the pot echoing in the silence, but I could barely taste it when I lifted the cup. The letters weighed on me. I had read the first two over and over again until the words burned into my mind. Robert's voice rang so clearly in my head that I could almost feel his breath on my cheek. My rational side fought back. How can this be? He's gone. Am I losing my grip on reality? But the details in the letters, the policy number, the handwriting, the unmistakable phrasing he always used, none of it could be dismissed. It was too precise, too exact. By 9 o'clock, I could not resist the urge to confirm the truth. With trembling hands, I dialed the number for Northwest Mutual, the company that had held Robert's life insurance policy. A receptionist answered, cheerful and polite. My voice wavered as I said, I need to speak to someone in claims. My name is Dorothy Whitman. It's about my late husband's policy. Minutes stretched as I sat on hold, forced to listen to an old tune Robert used to hum while shaving. It nearly broke me. But finally, a representative spoke. Mrs. Whitman, I see the policy here. Number NWM 7749 RJW. That's the one, correct? I gripped the counter to keep steady. The number was exact, just as Robert had written. Yes, that's correct. The woman continued, matter-of-factly. That policy was processed and paid out on November 15, 2021. A $500,000 payment was deposited into the beneficiary account on file. The room tilted around me. My knees nearly gave way. Excuse me, I whispered. Can you tell me which account received the funds? I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't disclose specific banking information. I can only confirm it was deposited into the designated beneficiary's account. Who was listed as the beneficiary? I pressed. There was a pause as she checked the file. The beneficiary designation was updated in 2020. It lists Linda Whitman Harrison. Is that your daughter? The phone nearly slipped from my grasp. Linda. My daughter. The one who had looked me in the eye and said, Mom, the money is still tied up in processing. For 3 years, she had lied. For 3 years, I had struggled to pay bills, skipped meals to save pennies, and felt the shame of falling behind, while she held $500,000 that was mine by right. I ended the call quickly, afraid my voice might betray the storm inside me. The coffee cup rattled in my shaking hands. I set it down before it shattered on the floor. The truth was clear now. Robert's warnings weren't a figment of grief. They were real. But how did he know? I waited until mid-morning, certain Linda would be busy teaching and Kevin buried in his spreadsheets. Then I climbed the attic steps again. Sunlight slanted through the dusty window, lighting the stack of letters that still lay hidden where I had shoved them. My heart raced as I laid them all out on the floor by postmark. 17 more. Each envelope seemed to hum with energy, waiting for me to open them. I chose the third, dated January 3, 2022. My hands trembled as I slid the paper free. My darling Dot, it began. I swallowed hard. The letter revealed that Kevin had tricked me into signing legal documents I barely remembered, a power of attorney that handed control of my finances to Linda. Robert wrote that the originals of our true documents, including his will, were stored in our safe deposit box at the bank. He even told me where to find the key, taped under the bottom drawer of his desk. My heart pounded as I went downstairs to Robert's office. I hadn't touched that desk since he passed. The drawer stuck slightly, as though resisting my intrusion. But there, taped with yellowing Scotch tape just where he said, lay the small silver key. I stared at it for a long moment, the weight of my decision pressing on me. If Robert's letter was wrong, if there was no box or no documents, then perhaps I was truly losing my mind. But if he was right, I tucked the key into my purse and drove to the bank. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles whitened. I hadn't driven much since Robert's passing. Linda always insisted it wasn't safe. But for the first time in years, I felt a spark of independence return as I pulled into the parking lot. A young manager guided me to the safe deposit room. The long metal box slid free, and my hands shook as I opened it in the private booth. Inside were neatly labeled envelopes, insurance policies, property deeds, investments, and one in particular that made my breath catch, Last Will and Testament, original. I pulled it out, my heart racing. The will was dated 6 months before Robert's death, signed and notarized. Every word was clear. Robert had left everything to me. Linda and Kevin were mentioned only as receiving small bequests after my passing. Nothing more. But the will Kevin had presented after Robert's death had been very different, granting Linda control over half the estate immediately. Tears filled my eyes as the truth unfolded in my hands. They had forged documents. They had stolen not just money but control of my life. I photographed every page with my phone, sliding the documents carefully back into the box. My hands trembled, not from age this time but from fury. Driving home, memories of Linda's concerned voice haunted me. Mom, you can't handle this on your own. We just want what's best for you. Lies. Every word had been a lie. That night, I sat in Robert's chair, staring at the stack of letters spread across the table. The man I buried had somehow guided me back to the truth. Whether it was through foresight, preparation, or something I couldn't yet explain, he had not abandoned me. My daughter had betrayed me. The child I had raised with love had taken advantage of my grief and stolen from me. The thought was a knife twisting in my chest. Yet alongside the pain was something unexpected: strength. For the first time in years, I felt purpose flickering again. I whispered into the silence, "Robert, I won't let them destroy me. I promise you that." I looked into the camera of my phone, seeing the tired woman reflected back, but also seeing steel in her eyes. And now let me pause for just a moment. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people you trusted most, by family, by those you thought would protect you, share your story in the comments below. I want to hear it. I want to pray for you. And if this story grips you the way it grips my heart, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the rest. Because the deeper I read into Robert's letters, the darker the truth became. This was no longer just about money. It was about survival. I sat at the kitchen table with the stack of letters spread before me like pieces of a puzzle only Robert could have created. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, each second daring me to open another envelope. My heart said yes, but my mind trembled at what more I might learn. I picked up the fourth letter. The postmark read February 14th, 2022, Valentine's Day. My fingers brushed over the seal, and I thought of how Robert used to surprise me every February with roses, even in the middle of his worst years fighting cancer. My chest tightened as I opened the envelope. "My beloved it began. I wish I could place flowers on the table before you, but this letter will have to do. What I need to tell you now may hurt more than anything else you have read." The words made my breath shallow. Robert explained something I never imagined possible. Linda was not my biological daughter. He described our struggles with infertility in the 1970s, how I had carried a pregnancy briefly but lost the child before I was able to accept the reality of it. During that time, he had arranged for a closed adoption, bringing Linda into our home when she was only a few weeks old. I had been too fragile to question the timing, too eager to hold a baby in my arms. He confessed that he had planned to tell me one day, but he never found the courage. I pressed the paper against my chest, torn between sorrow and disbelief. My mind ran through memories of raising Linda, her first steps across the living room, the way she clung to me on her first day of school, her tears when she thought I wouldn't show up to her high school play. She may not have shared my blood, but she had been mine in every way that mattered. The letter continued with a revelation that nearly made me drop it. 3 months before Robert's death, Linda had been contacted by her biological mother, a woman named Patricia. Wealthy, gravely ill, and facing the end of her life, Patricia wanted to leave Linda a fortune, $7 million. But Patricia's other children were contesting the will. Linda needed proof that she had been a devoted daughter to her adoptive mother to strengthen her claim. Robert's words pierced me. The pressure to sell your house, the power of attorney, the staged concern for your health. It's not about you. It's about appearances. Linda and Kevin are building a case to show Patricia and her lawyers that she has been a faithful, caring daughter. They're stealing from you to impress a dying woman who might make her rich. I set the letter down with shaking hands. The room seemed smaller, suffocating. Betrayal burned in my chest like fire. I had given Linda my life, my trust, my love, and she had twisted it into a performance. The next letter waited for me. March 2022. My darling, it read. What I must tell you will break your heart again. Linda and Kevin are not only stealing from you, they are making you sick. I froze. Robert explained that the confusion, dizziness, and fog I had been experiencing weren't natural. They weren't caused by age or medication. Linda had been slipping lithium into my coffee grounds, small doses meant to mimic symptoms of dementia. Enough to make me forgetful, to make me doubt myself, to make doctors suspect mental decline. My eyes shot to the blue tin of coffee sitting on the counter. Linda had insisted on bringing it to me each month, claiming it was healthier and organic. My hands trembled as I rose, grabbed the tin, and emptied it into the garbage disposal. The ground swirled down the drain like the evidence of their crime disappearing. Then I reached to the back of the cupboard, pulling out the old generic brand I hadn't touched in months. I brewed a fresh pot, my breath quickening as the aroma filled the kitchen. The first sip brought a clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was as if a fog lifted from my mind, leaving me sharper, steadier. Tears blurred my vision, Not from weakness, but from fury. My own daughter had been poisoning me to take control of my life. The seventh letter confirmed my worst fears. Robert had known about their plan to have me declared incompetent, using a psychiatrist ready to testify against me. They had forged his will, stolen my insurance money, and poisoned me, all to secure a future built on lies and greed. But Robert also offered hope. He told me to look deeper into the safety deposit box. "There is one more envelope," he wrote. "Inside you will find the evidence they never wanted you to see." The next morning, I returned to the bank. Patricia, the young manager, gave me a puzzled look but led me once again to the small room. My hands shook as I opened the box and sifted through the folders. Beneath the documents I had already examined was a manila envelope labeled in Robert's hand, "Justice for." Inside were copies of bank statements showing forged transfers, medical records of Linda's supposed concerns about my health, and photographs of Linda and Kevin entering my home when I wasn't there. But most damning of all was a handwritten statement signed by Kevin himself. My stomach twisted as I read it. He confessed to everything: changing the insurance beneficiary, forging Robert's will, creating false accounts, and slipping lithium into my coffee. He wrote that their scheme began as desperation but had grown into outright abuse. He admitted that Linda's motive was to appear as the perfect daughter to her biological mother, hoping to secure the inheritance. The statement ended with words that chilled me. "I can't do this anymore. Dorothy deserves better. I fear what Linda has become." The confession was dated only days before Kevin's sudden car accident. I pressed a hand to my mouth, trembling. Could it be that Linda had silenced her own husband to keep their secret? The thought gnawed at me, but the truth was undeniable. I now had evidence strong enough to expose them. I drove home, clutching the envelope as though it were a lifeline. My mind raced, not just with fear but with purpose. Robert had not abandoned me. Even in death, he had created a way to protect me. That evening, I read another letter. Robert revealed the final part of his plan: the upcoming meeting with Angela Morrison, who I believed to be a real estate agent. But Robert assured me she was not. She was a detective, working quietly with an investigator Robert had hired before his death. The visit would not be about selling the house. It would be about catching Linda in the act. My chest tightened as I folded the letter. I would have to act carefully. I would have to play the part Linda expected: confused, frail, ready to hand over control. Only then could the truth be revealed. I sat quietly for a long time, staring at Robert's handwriting. My eyes welled with tears, but this time not just from sorrow. I felt his love in every word. He had seen danger ahead and laid a path for me to follow, step by step, even after he was gone. I whispered into the empty room, "Robert, you've protected me better than anyone alive could. You've shown me that sometimes love stretches beyond life itself." For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt chosen, armed, guided. The stage was set. The trap was ready. And Linda, my daughter, the child I had raised, the woman who had poisoned me, was about to face a truth she could never escape. The day of the meeting arrived with a nervous energy that clung to the air. I paced the living room, dusting already clean tables, straightening cushions, and glancing at the clock far too often. My hands trembled, but not from age or illness this time. It was anticipation. At exactly 2 o'clock, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. A woman in her 40s stepped out, carrying a leather folder under one arm. Her tailored suit, calm smile, and professional stride painted the picture of a realtor. But I knew better. Angela Morrison, the woman Robert had mentioned in his final letter. She was here not to sell my house, but to unmask the daughter I no longer recognized. I forced myself into character. My cardigan hung loosely from my shoulders, my hair left untidy, and I placed reading glasses low on my nose. I let my steps drag slightly as I shuffled toward the door. When I opened it, I gave a weak smile. "Oh, you must be the lady Linda said was coming. Forgive me, I'm a little slow these days." Angela's eyes softened as she gave a respectful nod. "Mrs. Whitman, it's an honor to meet you. I'm Angela. May I come in?" "Of course, dear," I said, stepping aside with a practiced tremor in my hand. We sat together at the dining table, papers spread out before us. She spoke as though discussing property listings, but beneath the words, her sharp gaze flicked to me now and again, signaling that she understood. Moments later, Linda and Kevin burst through the door, their voices loud and rehearsed with cheer. "Mom, we're here." "Oh good, you've met with Angela already." Linda kissed my cheek too quickly, then turned her attention to Angela. "Thank you for helping us. We've been trying to get Mom to downsize for years. She's just not capable of handling a house this size anymore." I lowered my gaze, twisting a handkerchief in my lap. "Oh, maybe they're right," I muttered, letting my voice waver. "I forget things now and then. I don't want to be a burden." Linda placed a hand on my shoulder with false sweetness. "See? She admits it herself. It's really for her safety." Angela glanced at me, then back at Linda. "Before we go any further," she said, her tone shifting just slightly, "there are a few documents that need clarification. May I ask where the original will and power of attorney are stored?" Linda froze for a fraction of a second, then recovered with a smile. "Oh, I have those. I can bring them next week. We've been keeping them safe." Angela leaned back, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "Interesting. Because I've already reviewed the originals." The room went silent. Linda's face drained of color. Kevin shifted uncomfortably. I straightened in my chair, no longer the confused old widow. My voice was steady, firm. "You forged them. Both of you." Linda blinked rapidly, her tone sharpening. "Mom, what are you talking about? You must be mistaken." I slammed my hand on the table, the letters stacked beside me. "Do not lie to me in my own home. Your father told me everything." Kevin's mouth fell open. Linda shot me a glare that could have cut glass. "Dad's gone," she hissed. "He couldn't have told you anything." I slid the confession across the table, Kevin's signature plain as day. "He confessed before you silenced him. And I know about the insurance money. I know about the poisoning. Do you think I didn't notice the fog lift once I stopped drinking your coffee?" Angela stood then, her professional mask falling away. She opened her folder and revealed a badge. "Linda Whitman Harrison, Kevin Harrison. I'm Detective Angela Morrison. You're under investigation for fraud, forgery, theft, and attempted poisoning. You have the right to remain silent." Linda's face twisted with rage. "You can't do this," she shouted, lunging for the letters. But Angela stepped between us, firm and steady. Kevin sank into a chair, his face pale, eyes darting toward the floor. "I told her this would go too far," he muttered. Linda turned on him. "Shut up. Don't you dare." But Angela was already signaling toward the doorway. Two uniformed officers entered, their presence filling the room with authority. "Linda Whitman Harrison, you're under arrest," one officer announced as he pulled her hands behind her back. She fought, screamed, cursed, but the cuffs clicked into place. Kevin barely resisted, his hands trembling as the other officer secured him. I stood tall despite my years, watching as my daughter, my own flesh and all but blood, was dragged from the home she had tried to steal. My heart ached with the kind of pain no mother should ever know, but also with the fierce relief of justice long delayed. Linda twisted in the officer's grip, her eyes blazing at me. "You'll regret this, old woman. You think this is over? You're nothing without me." I stepped forward, my voice calm and unshaken. "No, Linda. I am more than you ever knew. And I was never alone. Your father told me." The words cut through her like a blade. For the first time, her defiance faltered. She stopped struggling, her mouth parting in shock. The officers led them out into the waiting car. Silence filled the house once more, heavy yet strangely freeing. Angela placed a gentle hand on my arm. "You were braver than most, Mrs. Whitman. You played your part perfectly." I sank into Robert's chair, exhausted but unbroken. "No," I whispered, my eyes filling with tears. "It was Robert. He protected me. Even after death, he led me here." Angela nodded softly, her voice warm. "Sometimes love is stronger than life itself." As the sirens faded into the distance, I sat alone in the quiet house, the stack of letters resting on the table beside me. My heart ached with grief, but for the first time in years, it also pulsed with peace. Robert had kept his final promise. He had protected me. And through him, I had survived. 6 months passed, and my life had changed in ways I could never have imagined. The house that once felt like a prison now felt like home again. No more whispers of manipulation. No more footsteps creeping through halls with hidden intent. The silence was no longer suffocating. It was peaceful. The courts returned what was rightfully mine. Robert's will was upheld, my finances restored, and with Kevin's confession, Linda's lies collapsed completely. Though the betrayal of a daughter can never truly be erased, justice had been served. I was free. For the first time in years, I woke up without the weight of fear pressing on my chest. The mornings were mine again. I brewed my own coffee, savoring its warmth as though it carried not just flavor but freedom. I tended to my garden, where the roses Robert had once planted still bloomed faithfully each spring. I began knitting again, filling the quiet evenings with soft patterns and the gentle rhythm of my needles. One afternoon, while sorting the last of Robert's letters, I came across the final envelope. The handwriting was as steady as ever, his familiar curve of the R drawing a lump into my throat. I hesitated before opening it, as though once I read this last message, it would truly be goodbye. My dearest, it began. If you are reading this, then you have found your strength. I am so proud of you. You were never weak, never helpless. I worried for you because I loved you, but I always knew you would rise. Now it is time to live. Don't let my absence be the end of your story. Travel if you wish. Make new friends. Learn something new. Let the world see the woman I have always seen, the woman I fell in love with. Tears blurred my eyes as I pressed the paper to my chest. His words were more than comfort. They were permission. Permission to move forward, to live without guilt, to embrace joy again. I took his advice to heart. Within months, I joined a book club at the library, where women my age shared stories and laughter that felt like medicine. I signed up for a painting class, though my hands weren't steady, and I laughed at the messy results. And for the first time since Robert's passing, I packed a suitcase and boarded a train to visit places we had once dreamed of but never reached together. It was during one of those trips, a small museum tour, that I met Marcus. A widower, kind-eyed and gentle, who spoke softly but carried stories that made me laugh until my ribs ached. We began meeting for tea, then dinners, then walks through the park. Neither of us pretended to replace what we had lost, but we both understood that love can appear in many seasons of life. More than romance, Marcus gave me companionship, a reminder that life was not meant to be endured alone. For the first time in years, I felt not just alive, but truly living. Looking in the mirror, I no longer saw a frail widow at the mercy of others. I saw a woman who had walked through betrayal, pain, and lies, and emerged with her dignity intact. I saw a survivor. And now you have listened to my story, I turn to you. If you've walked through storms of betrayal, if you've been underestimated or hurt by the very people you trusted most, know this: your story does not end in defeat. You can rise, you can rebuild, and you can live again. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments what part of this story touched you most. If you haven't already, tap the subscribe button, leave a like to help more people discover these stories, and share this video so that others may find hope in it too. Before we close, allow me to offer you a blessing from my heart to yours. May you be shielded from betrayal and spared from deceitful hands. May your health be strong, your days filled with peace, and your nights restful. And may love, whether from family, friends, or even from memories of those who have gone before, surround you always. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Until the next story, may grace and protection follow you wherever you go.